The first novel is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, narrated by Cyril Taylor Carr. This epic novel interweaves the lives of several Russian aristocratic families against the backdrop of the Napoleonic Wars, especially Napoleon's 1812 invasion of Russia. It follows enigmatic characters as they navigate love, loss, society, philosophy, and the chaos of war. The story blends historical events and profound reflections on history, fate, and human nature. The introspective nature of this novel puts it in a league of its own, developing characters through a aristocratic setting displaying war and love intertwined, as the name would suggest. The next novel is Portrait of a Lady by Henry James, narrated by Sophie Bennett. In this novel, Isabel Archer, a spirited and independent young American woman, travels to Europe and inherits a vast fortune that gives her the freedom to shape her own destiny. She encounters suitors and sophisticated society across Europe. This novel explores themes of personal independent marriage and manipulation. At its heart, this text explores the inner workings of a woman's evolution across time into modern society. And this text outlines the conflict between historical roles of women and modern life. If you want to know what a woman would do if she had endless resources and the benefit of living in the most advanced society in history, this novel is highly recommended. Sophie Bennett is my favorite narrator and is featured in many of these lists for her elegant style, clear voice, and foundational knowledge of the story she narrates. The next novel is Emma by Jane Austen, also narrated by Sophie Bennett. In this novel, Emma Woodhouse, a clever, wealthy, and beautiful young woman in the village of Highbury, fancies herself an expert matchmaker. After successfully pairing her governess, she meddles in the romantic lives of others, often with misguided results. Emma learns about her own flaws, love, and the importance of humility in this witty comedy of manners. The next text is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, narrated by Sophie Bennett. Orphan Jane Eyre endures a harsh childhood with her unkind aunt and at the oppressive Lowood School. As a young woman, she becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall, where she falls in love with the brooding Mr. Rochester. The story follows her moral growth, independence, resilience through hardship, and pursuit of love and equality on her own terms. It's a classic Gothic novel with elements of romance and social critique. This text blends paganism with modern Christianity, and in my opinion, has reached its status as a great novel on the basis of its pro-pagan elements. The next text is Notes from the Underground by Fyodor Dostoevsky, narrated by Brian Kelly. This short story is presented as the rambling, contradictory notes of an unnamed, bitter, and isolated former civil servant living in 19th century St. Petersburg. This is one of the funniest books I have ever encountered, despite its black humor. Part philosophical, and part story of past humiliations and failed social interactions. The text is a satirical one which comments on narcissism through the perspective of a narcissist itself. For many years, this was my favorite short story. I prefer this narrator because of his clear voice and in this specific recording because he sounds the same as how the author Fyodor Dostoevsky appears in paintings. The next text, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy, narrated by Davina Porter. This novella follows two main storylines in Russian high society. The passionate but tragic affair of the married Anna Karenina with Count Alexei, which leads to the scandal and personal unraveling, and in the parallel story of the thoughtful landowner Levin, who seeks meaning in life, work, family, and faith. Overall, this story is a commentary on the intricacies of romance on the backdrop of major financial inequality between the aristocracy and the serf class. This novel is a bit drier than War and Peace. I read all of War and Peace after starting Anna Karenina and before I finished Anna Karenina. I chose Davina Porter for this text because her style and affect matches the romantic and dreamlike subject matter of this novella perfectly. Next text is Turn of the Screw by Henry James, narrated by Sophie Bennett. In this short story, a young governess is hired to care for two seemingly charming orphans at the remote country estate of Bly. She becomes convinced that malevolent ghosts are influencing and haunting the children. This novel is a tense gothic ghost story similar to the kinds of stories referenced in Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. Some may consider this story a reference to Arrested Development with children as stand-in for anchorites. Next text is Master and Men by Leo Tolstoy. In this story, the wealthy, self-important merchant and his servant set out on a journey in harsh winter conditions to buy a grove of trees at a bargain price. They become lost in a blizzard, forcing a confrontation with morality and selfishness. I recommend this story if you want to know what separates a mere man from a master. The next story is a short story called The Call of Cthulhu by H.P. Lovecraft, narrated by Christopher Strong. This foundational cosmic horror story is framed as notes discovered by the author about ancient, incomprehensible entities. It connects mystery, reports of bizarre cult worship, and a terrifying sailor's encounter with a sunken city. It emphasizes humanity's insignificance in the face of vast and different cosmic forces. I chose Christopher Strong for this text because of his deep affect, which matches the depth of the story which Call of Cthulhu inhibits. This narrator is a great match for the subject matter of this text. The next and final text is Beauty and the Beast by Gabriella Barbot de Villanova. In this original, longer French fairy tale, a merchant's youngest daughter, known for her kindness, called Beauty, volunteers to live with the terrifying beast in this enchanted palace. To save her after her father picks at Rose from the beast's garden. Through her time there, she discovers the beast's true nature. The story explores themes of inner beauty, kindness, transformation, and love. This story is my most favorite on the list because it is a lesser known story and is very visual in that the reader can imagine the story as if it is a film. Any narrator is sufficient, although there are very good narrators available for free on YouTube. Overall, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what audiobooks I might like to read next.